Yeah.
I'm just saying I am the imposter. And I say that just as we go live. Good timing as always. Hi everyone. I'm taking control today instead of Jess, which is always fun. I can see the discomfort in your eyes right now. You're like, she's gonna ruin everything. I'm joking. I hope I don't ruin everything. Anyway, shall we introduce ourselves? If there's anyone new out there who doesn't know what a novel bunch is and what's going on right now, I'm Janet. I am living in Moscow, so if I say anything about time differences or not living in the UK, that is why. I'm a teacher. And this book discussion is about my pick for September, which was Transcendent Kingdom by Gyasi. And we're going to talk about it. I don't have a physical copy, so I've got my Kindle.
She's so bougie.
I know. Who is she?
Who even is she?
Yeah. I don't know what else I'm going to say, so I'm going to pass on to Jess.
Hello, I am Jess. I'm usually the one hosting this, but I've relinquished control and I'm living for it right now. I am the resident fantasy buff in a novel bunch, or the resident YA fantasy buff. If it's queer, I'll read it as well. And yeah, I'm really excited to get into this discussion because Transcendent Kingdom is about as far removed from my field of comfort as you can possibly get. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I'm going to hand down to Zozo.
Hola. I'm Zoe. I live in the UK, unfortunately. I wasn't originally. There's not a lot interesting about me. I'm the resident King Arthur mythology buff. If you look to my, what is it to you guys? My left to you guys? Yeah, here. This is my King Arthur section on my bookshelf. I can't.
Nice.
The top there as the highest where he should be. There's some more on the others as well. And I'm kind of into all sorts of genres. So this has been a good read for me. I've really enjoyed it. It's been different. So it's, yeah, that's kind of me. I have a chest infection. So if I'm coughing, it's not the dreaded. I'm just throwing that out there now.
I think all of us have probably got a similar problem. I don't know if you can hear it right now. My voice is just going like,
yeah, if you see the little mute notification come up, that's because we're all coughing.
Yeah. So I apologize in advance. Chest infection. I gave it to these two. So my apologies. Why is it opposite? Right. So I'm going to pass over to Mariette.
I'm Mariette. Yeah, I will read most things. I wouldn't say I'm an expert in anything. I have managed to fit 2 fantasy books with queer leads for this year, but that was a pure accident. I'm doing this on my bed, so if you're wonky, that is why. If the camera disappears up, that is also why, because I'm just on an iPad precariously balanced on my bed. So that's about it.
Yeah, so mine's on my knees right now, but I don't know, I can never get comfortable, so I'm going to be moving around like this half the time, so sorry if that gives you motion sickness. Okay. Anyway, shall we begin? Who's ready?
I'm ready.
I've got the strongbow, so I'm ready. Not sponsored.
I'm trying to remember where I put my notes on this. Okay, so let's start with our general thoughts and kind of spoiler-free reviews, I guess, about the book. I'm in teacher mode right now. I was just about to say, who would like to go first? Which is
you should, because it's your book.
Yeah, you go first.
All right. So, what did I think? I gave this book 4 stars on Goodreads. I'm just logging into Goodreads just in case there's anything else I want to say. This is the second book by Gyasi I've read. I read Homegoing, which was her debut, and I think it came out 2 years ago. I read it 2 years ago, so I think that was the same year. Anyway, and I gave Homegoing 5 stars. I love that book. It's one of my favorites. I would say it's like in my top 2. I think it's, yeah, definitely top 2. So I was really excited to get to this one, which is obviously why I chose this book as well. Not just because I know Jess doesn't read this genre and I didn't want to just be mean. I was just,
no, that's a whole reasoning.
Yeah, I was like, Jess made me read Loveless, so I'm going to make her. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I didn't enjoy it as much as Homegoing, but I think a lot of people I know who've read both have said a similar thing. The only reason they didn't give Transcendent Kingdom 5 stars was because it was like, having read Homegoing, it just wasn't quite the same level for them. And I felt that personally, but I know everyone's different and that's not a big deal for some people. I don't know. I'm just rambling as always. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really different. I think I wasn't expecting it to be exactly how it was and how it turned out. Obviously, you know, you get so much from the blurb and stuff, and you kind of know the main themes. But I thought it was written in an interesting way, and I'm not just saying interesting in one of those ways where you're like, oh yeah, that's really interesting, but it's not really interesting. I'm saying it's interesting because I don't know what else to say. Like, genuinely thought it was quite an interestingly structured book, and the way it was written was not what I expected, but I enjoyed it anyway. And I like how it all came together at the end as well. I thought that was good. I don't really know what else to say without spoiling it, so shall I go in the same order? I don't know which way you want us, that way. Let's go to Jess.
Yeah. Okay, so I didn't hate it.
That's a great way to start.
Like Marmite, I think.
No, I just like Marmite more. No, I did enjoy reading it, but it was tough going. I think that's why I struggle with it. I gave it 3 stars. I debated 2.5 stars at one point, but it's more a 3-star. I, like Janet, I adored Homegoing so much. It's so beautifully and poetically written, and also it's historical fiction as well, which is kind of a genre that I love. Literary fiction where it's character driven really isn't something that I like. My first experience with literary fiction was William Golding's Lord of the Flies, and it's kind of coloured my experiences with the genre since. I really don't enjoy it that much, but the only lit fic that I've really loved was Stoner, that we read in February. I don't know why I didn't enjoy it. I just didn't. I didn't connect with Gifty. I didn't connect with any of the other characters really, apart from Han. Han is a good egg. Oh, yeah. We love him. I don't know why, because it's something that I have, I've not experienced the stuff that goes on in this book, but I've experienced mental health struggles. I've experienced depression where you don't want to do anything, you can't get out of bed and everything like that. I don't know why I just struggled to connect with any of the characters. I think maybe because there's such an emphasis on religion. I'm not a religious person in any way, shape or form. I used to be not forced, but I used to have to go to church with my grandma and grandpa when I was staying with them, and I really didn't want to go. In my later years, when I was like 13, 14, I still had to go. And that was when I was staying with them. And I don't know, it just, the combination of science and religion, going from uber faithful to uber scientific, it was so jarring to me. And I get that these things exist in tandem with each other, and how that can shape a person's life growing up, because Gifty goes from being uber religious to being a neuroscientist, so it's like one extreme to the other. I think it was too jarring for me, and it was very, very heavy hitting, and I don't think maybe I was in the right mental place to read that sort of book, because a lot of the books that I read in September were queer and fluffy. So I was I was deep in the snowball's pit yet again. So it was very difficult for me to get through. I only got through it because I had the audiobook on 2.5 times speed while I was reading it. So that's the highest I've ever bumped an audiobook up. I really struggled to get through it, but I'm glad I read it at the same time, because you get to see a different side to modern America that you might not see. And especially, I think it's in the synopsis, this isn't a spoiler, the drug addiction not being something like heroin or crack, like it's so easy to fall into the heroin epidemic being like a major plot point. It was something completely different. Trigger warnings for all that sort of stuff as well. I thought that was quite interesting as well. But yeah, it wasn't my favorite book, but I'm glad I read it. So that's all I can say without spoilers.
Okay, all right. Zoe, what do you think?
I gave it 4 as well. To start with, I found it a little, I wasn't sure. I didn't find myself really wanting to pick it up and get through it. But once I'd really kind of got past, I don't know, maybe the first 100 or so pages, I kind of maybe started to fall into the rhythm of the novel, because it's not like it's it's going to sound weird, but it's not a story. It is a story, but it's not like a storybook. And I think that took a while for me to adjust to, because I haven't read something like this for a while. But I thought it was such an intricate story, and it was so what's the word I'm looking for? The word that came to mind was cleansing, but that's not the word I mean. In the sense that you're just listening to Gifty, and you just find everything about her life is such a huge juxtaposition, and she can't quite get to terms with it herself, but she can. And the battle with her mum, and we're not, not spoiling and stuff, but and the losses that she suffered, the fact that she's so placid about it all throughout, I found her quite endearing to listen to. I hear it in my head when I'm reading it, and I didn't relate to Gifty because I'm not other than religion, which I do relate to. It's I mean, not to the extent that it is in this book, but I do. And so for that, it was interesting, but I don't find it offensive that she was talking about science, and that I didn't find it offensive that the battle in it about science and religion, that wasn't offensive to me. It was super interesting. And I just again, it's not something I would normally go for, and it's not the favorite book I've ever read, but I did really enjoy it. And I thought it was a very cleverly written book. And you just go through everything with her, and I think it was an interesting one. I quite liked it. She covers some really, really dark topics in this, and but she does it in a way that just makes you feel like this is life, and so yeah, I gave it 4 because I actually thought it was very good, and I so not something I would naturally go for, but I'm super glad I read it because it was, it makes you think, and I quite liked that about it. Mariette?
Yeah, I didn't really know what I was going into with this book because I've not read her other one like Janet and Jess have, and I don't tend to read the blurbs of book club books. I'm like, well, I have to read them. It doesn't necessarily matter what it's about. So I wasn't really sure what I was expecting going into it, but it wasn't what I was expecting at all. I gave it 3 stars in total just because I found it difficult to read, and that's not necessarily like for the same reason as the other 2. It's more because the sciencey terms, I don't have a brain that's built for that kind of, so a lot of the terms and words and things were ones that just completely caught me off guard, and at points I had to go back and try and figure out what they were later on. So that's what made it a bit more slow going for me. But I did enjoy, this is a really weird thing, but I enjoyed the length of the chapters because they were short ones, so you felt like you were achieving stuff as you were reading it. But I didn't necessarily relate to the main character, but like as Zoe said, it was weird hearing the story from her point of view, in the fact that she doesn't really like react to anything. It's just, this is how it is, this is what happens. It's just, it's really weird to read a book from that point of view, because normally when you're reading it from a person's point of view, you're feeling their shock or their surprise or their joy, whereas this one, you don't really feel anything. It's just reading as it just happens. It's like, well, this happened and this happened, which is just, it's completely different to any other book I think I've read. But no, 3 stars. It is but no, it was good. It's just not my book, I don't think.
Okay, cool. I definitely agree. I think Zoe, you said at the beginning you weren't sure about it, and I was the same. Like, I don't know who I said it to, it might have been Jess, but I found like once I picked it up, and with the short chapters, it was fine to get through, but actually the thought of picking it up, it did sometimes take a bit of time, especially at the beginning. I was just like, I mean, okay, I'll read, but I need to do this first, and then I'd forget to read and do everything else, So I definitely get what you mean. We've had. I was
just going to say, I think also with me, it was a bit too big brain. Like, I did biology A level. I know like anatomy and physiology and things like that, but even for me, it was too big brain. It was too scientific in places and too theoretical, and that's not saying that this isn't still important and everything. It a little bit. It went a little over my head.
I mean, this was what I was saying to you. Like, the good thing about my Kindle with this book in particular is that not just the scientific language, but a lot of the language in general. There's a lot of big words. So I highlighted some, like, which I didn't know beforehand. So I was just like, interesting. Okay, why is this and stuff like that. But I was just going to say we've had some comments, which I think we will all appreciate. Hashtag save lives.
Chloe's in the chat.
Yeah, and she also didn't read the blurb, but no, I mean, I don't think I did because mine was on my Kindle, so I can't really read the blurb. But anyway,
she also said Han is a precious bean. She agreed.
Yes, Han is a precious bean. But so actually, my first point that I wanted to talk about is Gifty as the main character, and your thoughts on her being the protagonist. And we've kind of mentioned already, like, obviously, well, we're going to go more into the themes of science and religion and family, because I think those are the main ones that are really prevalent in the book, as well as, you know, the structure and how it's written and things like that. I've literally, those are my notes. You can't see them, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts about Gifty, because obviously at the beginning, or, you know, in her life, I guess, if we say about the beginning and the end in terms of chronologically rather than in the way it's written in the book, because it jumps around quite a lot. How do you think, I don't know, what do you think of her as an adult? Why do you think she tells a story in the way she does as an adult compared to when, you know, I found when she was younger, she felt like almost a different person. I don't know, how much is it? I don't really know what I'm trying to ask. Hang on. Like, I don't know. What do you think about her? Because obviously, yeah, she's been through a lot, and obviously you must have faced a lot of trauma with the things that she's been through. If you would like me to put on the spoiler zone, let me know, because we could be bordering on some territory here.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. What do you think about her as a character? Why she's written in this way? Why she chose to go down the path that she went down? Or I don't know. What do you think about Gifty? Who would like to go first? Any takers?
Okay. I mean, yep.
Sorry.
No, go for it.
I liked her, and then I didn't like her, and then I liked her, and then I didn't like her. And then I liked her. Only because I found her attitude, a full-on roller coaster. I found her attitude a little bit annoying at times. I felt for her so much when she was a little girl. Still spoiler free. Okay. But then when she was older, I found her a little bit irritating in the sense of like her attitude towards everybody. But then I suppose you're supposed to, because then you learn about her life and you're like, okay, I understand why you're annoyed about everybody. But then like her attitude, what was her name? Her attitude towards the gal that helps her out at the end. Is it Catherine?
I think so. I was going to say Kate, but yeah, Catherine.
Yeah, Catherine. Yeah.
Catherine. Catherine. Like her attitude towards her, I found really annoying, because I was like, you need help, and you're asking for help, and then she's trying to give it to you, and you're just shutting her down, and trying to cut her off, and I find that really irritating. But that's, again, I don't know if someone else would find that irritating, because it depends on your kind of values as a person, I suppose, because someone that doesn't care about other people is going to be like, okay, well, whatever.
The sociopaths amongst us.
Yeah, but I thought she was quite. I thought it was interesting. Her name was Gifty as well, because I just think of a gift, and obviously the point is her mum was like, I don't know, is this a spoiler? I don't know if this is spoilers or not.
I think it does say that she has a
tumultuous relationship with her mother.
Yeah.
Let's say that. And, you know, her mum is very much like, I didn't want you, you know. And the whole point is that, you know, kids are a gift. Go back to our olive discussion. And I thought, you know, then she's called Gifty, and it's so jarring as to hear her be's everything kind of perceived as everything but a gift, you know. But then I look at it as her gift in science and her gift in knowledge, and then her gift with religion, and then is that kind of, the point? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I just really, I felt like she was such a interesting character. She has got so much to give, and she's so focused and so determined, and I like her honesty. There are times when she says everybody thinks that I'm doing this or I should be doing it for this reason, when actually I'm just doing it because I need to know everything. And but her level of protection she's got for herself because of the trauma she's been through. And I think I enjoyed her being the protagonist because I was interested in her story. I was interested in what she had to say. But then when there was times when I found her annoying, I felt very much like I just didn't want to read. I just wanted her to stop talking. But you had to listen to it all to get the full rounded version of Gifty. And the end of the book, I was quite pleased for her and for everything. And obviously I don't think that's a spoiler because I didn't say anything, but and I think kind of linking to what you were trying to say, Janet, is when she was a kid, she is such a different character.
Yeah.
And I think it's so interesting to read her as her, 11, 12, 13-year-old self, and then read her as her present day self, which she's 28. She's 28, isn't she?
Something like that,
Something
yeah.
like that, yeah.
And I just think you can really see the growth in her as a little one and where she is now.
Ow!
And
sorry, cat.
Cat.
And I really liked that. I liked there was such a major difference in her young self and her current self.
Yeah.
And I liked the development of that is, you learn about it as she grows up through the book, and I liked that.
Yeah. I definitely think in some books I've read, when it's got that kind of flashback, almost narrative going back and forward in time, you don't see much of a difference in the character. And obviously, maybe in those books I haven't had the same kind of trauma or the same experiences, and fair enough. But like, I think in this one it feels more realistic in a lot of ways. Like, you can imagine someone going through those things, and I think that's the thing I like about Gyasi's writing style, is even with Homegoing, and there's like 100 different characters, but like it feels very real, and throughout all these different experiences and stuff like that. And I think part of the reason especially at the beginning, I didn't really love Gifty, and I didn't really love reading her adult chapters or sections as much, as because I just much preferred her younger self and reading about that period of her life rather than being an adult. And I was like, why is she a scientist? I don't care about her being a scientist, and why is she mice? I don't what. But then I think by the end of it, it just kind of all makes sense as to why everything happens the way it does. And I basically agree with everything else that you've said, so I don't really have anything else to add. I don't know if Mariette, do you have anything you want to say?
There we go. Weirdly, I found it the opposite. Even though I struggled with the language of her older self, I found that more interesting, weirdly, than her younger self. Like, I was like, I understood why we were hearing it, and it was really important that we heard the younger section because of everything that goes on in her life with her brother and her mum and her father, like her whole entire family unit. But weirdly, I was more into it when I was reading about her older self, and even though I didn't understand half the words she was saying about science, more than half the words, and I did not like what she was doing to the mice. But that's I don't know why, like her relationship with her mum as she's older and things like that. I found that more interesting to read than the younger bits, to be honest. But other than that, I don't really have much to add to what you've both already said about Gifty as a character and as a person.
Jess, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm kind of lukewarm about Gifty in both sections. So like when she's an adult and when she's a kid. I don't know I can't place why I'm lukewarm to her. Like, obviously I care about what happened, and I do find the transition between pious, almost zealot behavior that she exhibits when she's a kid like all this sort of stuff, like praying for the neighbor's dog and making herself out to be like important in like the religious community in her local area and all that sort of stuff. I find the transition between that and like very stern, very strictly scientific to then the mix of both later on, I found that really interesting. But her as a character, I was just like, okay. I don't know why though. I really don't know why. I loved her relationship with Nana. I loved her relationship with her brother. I thought that was really, really interesting, and I wanted more of that. With her mother, I don't know why I couldn't get my head around it. I think because Mum and I have such a close relationship, and it's, yeah, we even share colds, as she's just said. Share everything. I think because I've got such a good relationship with my mum, I really struggled to understand this poorer relationship with her mother. Her mother in the initial chapters when she's a kid is horrible to her. Like, oh my God, like, we'll discuss it probably later, but this woman, man, this woman. And like the worship and the hero worship almost of the son, and it's just like, oh, I didn't like the relationship between her and her mother. Obviously, the daddy issues. I have daddy issues. I level with that quite a lot. And her brother, I loved the relationship with her brother, and I loved seeing how quickly it went south as well for Nana, which that's not a spoiler. It's in the synopsis that he dies of an overdose. But yeah, I really don't know about Gifty. I'm still confused how I feel about her. I don't feel hugely like I love this character. I don't feel hugely like I hate this character. It's kind of neither here nor there. And I never feel that way with the main protagonist. I either absolutely loathe them and can't wait to finish the book to get rid of them, or they become my comfort baby and I love them. And yeah, she's just kind of here nor there for me. So I agree that I love the roller coaster that she goes on, from being like this very staunchly religious little kid to then, when she loses her brother, going more into the science and like religion failed her and things like that, and then eventually coming to realize that they can both exist together. I found that really interesting. But yeah, her as a character I wasn't that fond of.
Interesting. Sorry. That's fine. No, good. It's just always good to hear all the ideas. We've had some more comments from Chloe, contributing to the discussion a bit. So yeah, she agreed with Mariette about her being a little bit emotionless, but thought she was still a fascinating character. I think that's kind of like, yeah, I think we all would agree with that. She's so interesting to kind of dissect. Pun not intended, because she's a scientist. But yeah, I think that's the point in a way. Given what we know now, having read the book, I think it's easier to see why she's the way she is as an adult and why she's so disconnected in a lot of ways from the real world. Well, maybe not, but in some ways you can probably put it like that. And yeah, Chloe also says she loved the difference between child Gifty, who's full of emotion, versus adult Gifty, who's quite numb because of trauma. Yeah, I think it's so well written, and it's such a clear like contrast. I agree with that. Contrast, not contract. Didn't notice that one, but thank you.
No, I didn't.
And I didn't either.
Yeah, and she also said she couldn't connect with child Gifty because of the religious connection, but found both sides interesting. So there we are. Thanks for your input, and also your joke, Jess, when you're talking about you and your mum sharing lurgies.
Yeah, even share DNA.
So funny.
I mean, I'm literally my mum's mini me, so
yeah, you are. It's beautiful.
When we were blonde, when I had blonde hair, you couldn't tell us apart.
What I think I might do now is put on the spoiler zone, just because I've been talking for about half an hour. I feel it's a good time to move on to deeper discussions.
The spoiler zone.
Dun, dun, dun,
dun. So yeah, our next topic is about the structure of the book as a whole. So jumping back and forwards in time and things like that. That's kind of just what I had in mind. If you have anything else you want to talk about within this theme, feel free. But I found going through it, I think this was probably one of the most difficult things in a way when I was reading it. I found it to be quite, I think Gyasi said it was quite jarring in a way because it's such a stark difference, especially at the beginning when it's like, I can't remember if, I guess when her mum first arrives to stay with her and she just, doesn't do anything. She stays in her room all the time and just doesn't get out of bed and stuff. And like, it's quite obviously like a mental health issue. And, but I just didn't know why at that point. And the impatient part of me, maybe it's the Capricorn in me, I don't know. But I was just like, why is there no relationship here? I want to know this now. And then, jumping back and forwards, obviously you get to know more. And that's why I think at the beginning, I liked it in her childhood sections because you're getting all that information and it felt more like that was the main plot. Even though it's not a plot-driven book, I felt like that was the most, juicy part. And I don't know. I think towards the end, I enjoyed the jumping back and forwards in time more, but also I don't really know how to describe it. Like, it almost felt like it was necessary at the beginning, or maybe like it could have been done at one point and then the other more. Does that make sense? Rather than, I don't know, it just felt like it jumped a bit too much sometimes for me. I don't know. And then, so then it would be like the start of the next chapter and suddenly she'd be back in like the modern times, I guess, as an adult. And it would be just as I was getting into the previous section with like her brother or something like that. And that's what I found. Maybe that's partly why I didn't give it a 5 stars because, I'd just be getting into it and then the chapter would finish and I'd be like, no, I wanted to read more about this.
Yeah.
And sometimes even as an adult that happened and then she'd jump back in time and like, wait, no, I wasn't ready for that yet. But I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I do love... Oh, Mariette, do you want to go?
Yeah, I just was going to say, I've said it before. It's not a secret. I'm not good with jumping time books. It confuses me and it confuses my brain. I like it when things, they don't have to necessarily be in a chronological order, but I need kind of parts, if that makes sense. I need one section to be tied off before we jump back or forward in time. Like Janet just said, I didn't like the fact that I would get into a chapter and then suddenly we were back in time again. So I understand why it wasn't told chronology. That's not a word I can say, apparently. But I would have preferred it if it had been told that way. But maybe with like in the later sections, the diary entries included and stuff to give the section maybe a little bit more context. But I'm not a fan of things that jump like that in time. It just screws with my brain and I have to try and figure out where I am again, and I'm not very good at that. That's all I wanted to say.
That's fair.
Say whatever you want, Mariette.
I usually really like this trope. I like the jumping back and forth like through different timelines and all that sort of stuff. But I think I totally get where you guys are coming from. Like it would leave almost on like a cliffhanger in the present to go back to the past. And I find this with multiple POV books as well. I'm gonna bring up Carry On again. When you're in the perspective of like the 2 main protagonists, and then it switches to a secondary protagonist that you're not that fond of, but you still love them, but you want to be in the juicier bits. It's really, really jarring, and it can affect your flow with reading. And I think that sometimes jumping in the middle of a bit when necessarily it didn't feel like it should jump back, where sometimes a cliffhanger can work. It can leave you like, oh, I've got to read the next bit to find out what happened. But I think sometimes it was paced wrong in that you wouldn't have the momentum to want to keep going because, yes, there was a cliffhanger, but it wasn't as dramatic a cliffhanger as it could be, and that then it didn't want to spur you through the different timelines to pick back up where you were. I honestly cannot remember a lot about this book, even though I've got 5 pages of notes. That might be because of the speed that I read it at with the audiobook. Not gonna lie, but like we were saying earlier, I just didn't have the impetus to want to pick it up. And I think that might be because of the pacing and how it would just jump randomly. It didn't feel like it was the sections were building up to something to then naturally flip back to the other timeline, so flip back to the past or flip forward to the present. I think that's my main issue with it, and that's why I couldn't connect, because I didn't feel like I was getting enough time, or I was getting too much time to connect with one aspect of Gifty as opposed to the other aspects. And if this is making any sense, yeah, I just felt like the pacing wasn't conducive to me getting on with the text. That's just a personal thing.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. Zoe, anything to add?
Yeah, I'm actually really glad that you said that, Jess, and Mariette actually, because I felt the exact opposite. I actually thought it was really well structured. I thought the flips in time were brilliant. I I thought they were just because it's a very different way of doing it. Because usually with books like that, it's so obvious, isn't it? There's dates like as the chapter heading, so you know you can see exactly what time you're flipping. So you're like, oh, okay, this next is I'm back in 1914, and it's so obvious. But I think because of the way I was reading it, and I started to really get into Gifty and her story, and really getting into her thought process, I actually found the flips in time quite natural, because you read a section and she's talking about something that you don't really have any idea what she's talking about, like a party. And then I was like, okay, I'm having a feeling that the next chapter is probably going to be her as a Littlin, and we're going to see this party that she's talking about. Yeah. And that's what happens. So she's just talking as present Gifty. And then because I was in the flow of her as a character thought process, the flips in time actually felt very natural, because I would read something in her present tense and I maybe question my understanding of it, but then she'd then explain it but without saying this. How am I going to word this? It wasn't her being like, so dear diary, today I'm going to talk about the party that my 28-year-old self just talked about. It was it just kind of naturally fell that way. And I actually quite liked it, because sometimes I agree with you. I was like, no, I'm in the middle of reading about 13-year-old Gifty and her brother. I really don't want to go back to 28-year-old Gifty right now. But you just do, because you have to. But I just thought I really liked it. I thought it was such a good structure for her mindset, because it's as if her younger self is helping her older self tell the story.
Yeah.
And I really liked it. I just felt like sometimes I was just, oh, this is so clever. Now we're back as the Littlin, and she's telling us she's expanding on the thought that 28-year-old Gifty's just brought to the front. And I really liked that. And I mean, I can understand it is confusing, because like you say, Jess, there is no natural shift into it, and you just think, oh my goodness, why are we? But I quite liked it. I think because maybe I got it, because Jess, you didn't maybe necessarily relate to the book as much, and you weren't in tune with it. Maybe I don't mean that disrespectfully at all.
No.
You didn't maybe follow the flow of Gifty's mindset. So
yeah, and I think, sorry, just to pick up on that.
Yeah, no, go for it.
I think she philosophizes a lot, a 28-year-old Gifty, and I think that's what kind of switched me off a little bit. It got too big brain. It got very much like I'm back in my historiography module in first year of my master's, which I absolutely hated. The theory of it is like the theory of science and the theory of religion, and I just kind of switched off at the theory of theoretical practice, and I'm just sat here like, oh no. And then suddenly for me it felt like there was no connection when it switched back, but I think that's why there was no connection.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes you'd get to the end of her child chapter, and then you'd get back to her adult chapter, and suddenly all that entire section of her adult self and her younger self talking about the same thing have gone, and you've moved on to something completely new. So I understand that I completely relate to. I understand, I agree with you. But on the whole, I have to say I did quite like the structuring, and I thought it was quite clever how her younger self would pick up on the thoughts of her older self and run with it, and you'd learn. And I suppose it shows how her younger self, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. How her older self, present day Gifty, has dealt with those emotions, because she's had to, and she's 28 now, and she's in the situation she's in. Whereas then you go to the child version of Gifty and you learn about how she actually got through it, because that was the present Gifty at the time going through whatever she was going through.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting to get both perspectives on it and see how matter of fact 28-year-old Gifty is in comparison to her 13-year-old self, who's trying to figure out her religion, trying to figure out her race, trying to figure out her situation, trying to figure out her family status, trying to figure out her father, trying to figure out her next steps, trying to figure out her mother's mental health, trying to figure out Reverend what's his face that seems to pop up everywhere. You know, she's trying to figure out who she is while constantly being hit with a battering ram of reality that she's too young to comprehend. And then so it's quite interesting. And then she talks to God and her diary entries and how she speaks to. I just thought it was really interesting how it was structured. I really liked it because I felt like younger Gifty was explaining the things that 28-year-old Gifty couldn't. And I thought that was, again, a massively well structured flip in structure, because ordinarily you would imagine it's the older person that would be able to understand and explain, but she can't, and she has to rely on her 13-year-old self to explain it.
It's almost like adults, I mean, I know this for a fact, but adults are very good at complicating things, whereas children, they just say things as it is, you know, kids are cool kind of thing. But I mean, it's kind of relevant as well. And I was going to say, I feel like I think it does come across, but like she definitely had to grow up quick, you know, given everything that happened. And I think that comes across when she's an adult as well. And when there's the parts about when she's at college as well, you know, it's quite clear. I think she's there to study rather than to kind of have fun. And I don't know, I think it was really clever that Gyasi chose for her to be like a neuroscientist. I mean, I think maybe it's kind of an obvious choice given what happens with her brother. She's so interested in why, like, that's the big question. Like, why did this happen to him? What was he thinking? How was he feeling?
Why does addiction happen? Why does depression happen?
Yeah. So I think, with the structure, although I think it was more the chapter length. I would have liked them to be longer sometimes. I think that was more the reason I struggled with the jumping back and forwards, because I was like, wait, no, I wasn't ready yet. But no, I think I do agree with Zoe as well. I feel like I'm in the middle. I agree with everyone.
Yeah.
It makes sense. And I think the more you read, the more you realize this is why it's happening in this way. Like, I can't really imagine it happening in any other format, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know. That's just what I think about that. Okay, so we're going to go on to the main 3 themes, I think, of the novel. First one being religion. We can't not talk about that. I've kind of got religion and then science and then family, but I think they kind of all tie into one a little. I mean, you can kind of all connect them, really, can't you? So if there's, let me think. Can we separate these? Maybe it'd be easier to just talk about all of the themes. Religion, science, we can put those 2 together. Religion and science. There we go. Next topic. So I think it's interesting. Obviously, she's from Alabama. Well, born in Alabama, raised in Alabama. She's the only one who's born in America, I think. I can't remember if Nana was born in America.
Yeah.
Nana was born in Ghana, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And I thought also, I don't know how much this really comes into like religion and science, but obviously, you know, in the American South, it is quite a religious area. I don't know about, you know, science as such, but as we've kind of discussed already, it's given her experiences with her brother, and I think it's not surprising, like I said, that she goes down the scientific route because she wants to understand why, and I feel like she's obviously not getting enough answers. I can imagine her being that little kid, you know, going to Sunday school or something and asking the guy in charge, whoever's there, like, oh, but why did God do this? And why did that happen? You know, asking those questions, which you can't always have an answer to, whether you're, well, I don't know if you can have an answer to it if you're religious or not, but, you know, there's difficult questions. And I think, you know, maybe that is why she turns to science instead of religion. I don't know. Or specifically like sticking with one or the other. It's nice that she kind of has both. I like the way that they explore both of those topics throughout the book. Am I making sense? I feel like I'm just rambling and I don't really know what I'm talking about, but anyway.
It's a tough topic.
Yeah, and I think she wrote it in a really, even though some of the language was quite difficult, I think the way she dealt with those topics was really, I don't know. What's the word? Why has my mind gone blank? I could understand what she was saying, basically. Like,
relatable.
I'm gonna let someone else talk because I clearly don't know
Relatable, yeah.
But yeah, what do you think about her as a character, kind of almost being in between those two different themes of religion and science? Like, I don't know.
I really liked how religion and science, like the dichotomy of it, is presented through Gifty, because it is something that can exist together. But what I really liked seeing is, like, Alabama is I'm going to use a term here, a Bible basher state. So it's like religion is like a big thing down there. Christianity is like it's a central part of the community, and your local church is like your central hub. So to see her go from one extreme to the other, to go from extremely pious and extremely religious to then being so scientific, and then when she goes to New York State to study for her degree, and she's surrounded by all these scientists that are just like, you're religious, like you can't be religious if you're a scientist. Seeing the opposition that she faces and how she deals with it is really, really interesting. And I really liked how she stood up for her old self, even though she's very much like turned her back on religion largely by this point. The fact that she stands up for it to, I think it's Anne. I really, really liked that. And she had that want to stand up for how she was raised and things like that. So the rabbits just distracted me and thrown me completely off. Yeah, I liked that through Gifty you can really see how religion and Poppy, you can really see how they can exist together. And the older she gets, the more she realizes that is the case. I thought that was really, really interesting. So she goes from being completely religious to completely scientific to then being that sort of nice in the middle ground when she meets Anne at university, and then even later when she's 28 and when she's doing her PhD and things like that, she goes back to religion a little bit more, and I thought that was really nice. So yeah, my rambling thoughts because somebody distracted me.
I wanted to talk about a quote. Well, on my Kindle, it's on page 45. I don't know how that correlates to anyone else. Chapter 10. But she's talking about her mum being like a matter-of-fact woman and being kind of close to cruel. And then she says, when I was very little, my mother took to calling me Asa. I don't know how to pronounce that. Apologies. The miracle berry that, when eaten first, turns sour things sweet. Asa in context is a miracle berry. Without context, it is nothing, does nothing. The sour fruit remains. I feel like that's quite an interesting one with this theme because, you know, obviously she's talking about this miracle thing, which within religion, you know, has many different stories or whatever. And it's interesting how she brings that up because I'm kind of like, is that how she views herself? Does she think she's just kind of nothing? Is that how she views herself now? Because that's how her mother called her when she was younger. Is that why, I don't know, she wants to do more research-based stuff and kind of sit in the background rather than, you know, being the doctor who finds the cure to cancer, or, you know, like that person who's out in the spotlight, because she never had that. I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know if that really comes into the topic of religion and science, but I don't know. I just think it's a very interesting one in terms of her character development as well. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. But
yeah, I've got that quote written down as well. I really like that. I like that it's making like it turns sour things sweet. So maybe making good out of the bad situations, and like religion can do that, and also like with the mice, they're suffering to for the good of like curing this mental health epidemic. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah. and I guess it also kind of links with her name, like Gifty. Like she's supposedly this, you know, like we said at the beginning, like she's like a miracle, like the miracle of childbirth or whatever. But then is like the reality, is that actually the case or not? But yeah, anyway. Any other thoughts? I could probably just ramble for ages, but anyway, I'll let someone else speak.
I think it's interesting how they all coincide, because she's not opposed to science, she's not opposed to religion. She's driven into religion because of her childhood, and she wants to find kind of a kinship with her mother through religion. She's like, I'm going to keep going, even when Nana's not going anymore, and I have to be this child. And then she's saved, and she finds this importance within herself for everybody else through religion, like we talked about at the beginning with the dog, and she thinks she's got this incredible powers through God and things like that. And it's then quite interesting that actually at the end of it, she's found this importance within herself through science as well. And it's as if she's trying to be the god of science, you know. And that's quite interesting. I think it's quite nasty, some of the stuff that's said about religion in this book, especially with the attacks that she gets from her classmates, and just, you know, all of the kind of the dismissal of religion by most of her friends. But she's like a walking contradiction, because she's super religious, but then she goes into science, but then she wants to live by the laws of God, but she's bisexual, and you know, that's against God. I mean, it's not, but come on now.
No, it's a mistranslation.
It's she's everything, you know, and it's exhausting for her. She's got so many battles going on, and it's as if she can harness the power of one thing, which is the hardest thing that anyone could possibly comprehend, but she's so worried about being proud of it. You know, pride is a sin, and it's like she's constantly got a battle, an internal monologue of what she's doing wrong, but all the time all she's trying to achieve right. And that's quite sad, because when she's dating who's she dating, and he says, why don't you talk to people about your work, why don't you talk to people about what you're doing? And you know, she's such a closed book, she won't talk about it, and they won't understand this, but she won't talk about religion because they won't understand that. But then I find it interesting that Anne was such a bully about her religion and so nasty to her about it, and then they suddenly become best friends. I think possibly maybe they were wanting to be more than friends, and then the complete disregard for her as a person, and then you never hear anything about her, but she tells you that right at the beginning. She's like, I'm not going to see Anne ever again, but you still have to go through the journey of their friendship, but you know that it doesn't last. And it's as if she's constantly trying to figure out what's right and constantly trying to figure out what's wrong. Maybe she's got this internal battle as well of science is against God, so she feels bad that she's even doing it. But she's just her ability to adopt them all into her life and have them coexist is quite powerful, actually. And it's as if sometimes even during her journey through science she still turns to God, but then she doesn't, and then she disregards it, and then she doesn't know. But I think all the time it's just within her, isn't it? And maybe she's angry maybe she's using science to try and understand the decisions of God with her brother, because maybe she believes that they are all one. And I just thought it was the way she battles with it is quite admirable, really, because it's this constant fight within herself, and this constant fight with her mother and her dad, and everything is going against, feels like it's God going against her, but she still maintains that passion for him and religion. And
there's a quote I've just found it. So similar to what you've just said, like she chooses science as something to understand because she can't understand why this God that she loves so much has kind of given them all these turmoils and obstacles and all of these horrible things. And she says, I don't know if it's in a, it's at the very end of chapter 6, at the end of her diary entry, she says, please God, let him stay like this forever because he's starting to look normal. And I think, and then the next line is, the last line of that chapter is, my brother died of a heroin overdose 3 months later. It's just, I feel like that's a very standout moment for the whole book, because obviously you kind of know what direction it's going to take, if you have read the blurb, if you are one of those people who does that. So, I think it's one of those points where you're like, okay, I can sort of, now, obviously now having read the book and knowing what happens and stuff, you can kind of see why she takes the route of science as a way to, it's something that she can learn and she can understand, because, I mean, science and maths is just one answer, and it's just, that's it. It's not like philosophy or literature or something where the answer could be anything, and it's, no one's right or wrong. I feel like maybe that's why she chooses this path to go down, maybe in terms of how she's treated by her family a bit as well, because she's always under the shadow of her brother, even I guess after he's died in some way. So maybe she just wants something where she can, become the best at understanding this such complicated science stuff. But I just thought that quote definitely linked with what you said there as well. Yeah,
because it's almost like Nana's been held up on like this pedestal, and his mother's almost like hero worshipping the memory of him, and she's not able to live up to that because she wasn't the miracle child. She wasn't the one conceived against all odds, and her mother even is just like, I didn't want another child, straight to her face. And it's just like, dude, like you don't say that to someone. But she's got like this massively long shadow, despite the drugs, despite the scandal and everything that Nana caused, like when he quit soccer, when he went to basketball, when he then had his addiction, and then when he died. And despite all of the scandal surrounding it, he still casts such a long shadow, and it feels like it might be the only way for her to get out from underneath his shadow is to go completely in a different direction to her mother, who is very, very pious, who has always believed in religion and has always believed in like traditional Ghanaian ways of life and things like that. And her mother is very, very proud of her and what she achieved, but she doesn't show it that often. I don't know.
I agree. There's a point when I'm just writing ideas down as they're coming so I don't forget them. When Nana quits soccer, the moment when he's in the bus and he's like really upset and he doesn't want to get off, and it's just them and the family are there, and she's like, do you want to play? Kind of, I feel like that's the most human portrayal of the mother that I can remember, like in the entire book almost, because obviously at the beginning we just see her at almost her lowest, and then obviously later on, because I think they do mention this is like the second time Gifty's ever seen her mum at this low point, but I thought, I don't know, that portrayal of her, I don't know, I just really imagine myself in that position, because my mum was always very like, I don't know, she always encouraged me and my siblings to do different things, and mainly swimming was just like, she didn't force us to learn how to swim, but she was basically like, it's a life skill, you need to know how to do it. So as long as you can swim, I don't care. And I just kind of became obsessed with it, but that's not the point. But I don't know, I could really picture myself like when I was that age, or even my brother, he used to play football. But like, if we did say something, hey, I don't actually like this anymore, like that's the version of a mother that I have in mind, because that's what my mum would have been like. She would have had that same reaction. She'd be like, okay, fine, whatever.
It's on page 7. I've got a note that says page 70-71. It's his decision to give up soccer, despite all the reasons that the mother could be angry. She wasn't angry and supported his decision. And to be fair, like, they went hours out of their way on this bus trip to play an away game, and she gave up a day's worth of work, which she really needed, and she would have every right to be cross because that's their only source of income, because deadbeat dad, and kids obviously are in school and everything. But she's supportive of him. I get the feeling that maybe if it was Gifty, it might not have been so positive, but it's nice to see that their mother does have a softer side, given how she acts around a lot. Like when he stood on that rusty nail and she put the hot oil on his foot and everything, and it was just like, Mariette, do you have anything you want to add?
Not really. You kind of covered it all, to be honest. As you said, Gifty's mum doesn't treat her how I've ever been treated by my mum, so it's such a hard contrast and thing to get your head around, that could be a way of looking and thinking for someone. But as you said, Janet, Gifty, the main time that Gifty's mum behaves normally as you'd expect her to is on the bus, because that's how my mum has reacted, because I was one of those children who started a lot of hobbies and just like most of them and stopped them quite quickly. So yeah, I don't know. You've already covered most of my thoughts. I think this book might have been slightly too big brain for me, because you're saying things that I had not thought of at all. You pretty much covered everything I thought of already. The only thing that I would add to it is the mice. Like, I understand that that's the way medicine has to be done and all of that kind of stuff, because you can't test on humans straight away. I get that, but like, it's how she doesn't necessarily think about them too much until her mum comes into the lab, and her mum's like, do these labs feel pain? Do the mice feel pain? And that's the point where she's like, oh wait, yeah. So I did, that was kind of the moment for me. I was like, how have you not thought about the mice up to I don't get it. That like was kind of a big point in my book, in my head, of like, well then, all right, let's continue on with this. Please leave the poor mice alone.
That's a good point, actually. I was going to say, since we're kind of talking about family, and that's the next theme that I had written down, I feel like we should just continue talking about family, because I feel like that's easier to talk about than religion and science. You know, I don't know about you guys, it's 11 o'clock at night here, and it's even for me, who likes to think they have a very big brain and understands everything, I probably don't, especially at this time. But anyway, family. So I wrote down as a note on my Kindle. Oh, okay. No, we'll get to that in a second. So in some way, in a lot of ways, I mean, anyway, to be honest, at the beginning, they are kind of the epitome of a nuclear family, you know, like 2 kids, boy and a girl, like living in, I think, the suburbs, I guess. I imagine them being in the suburbs anyway. And it seems like they've got the perfect setup, you know, what more could you want, kind of thing. But I guess obviously, you know, first the dad leaves and he's like, yeah, I'll come back, and he doesn't. And then obviously what happens with Nana, and it's kind of obviously, well, the idea of a nuclear family is very unrealistic in a lot of ways anyway, for it to be perfect. But I think it was interesting that she chose that and really showed the breakdown of that family, and how, you know, even for families who might not be as privileged as others, I guess it could happen to anyone in a lot of ways. And I've also written down the idea of this American dream, because obviously, what is her mum's name? I can't remember if she's ever named.
No, I don't think so.
But anyway, Gifty's mum, like, she's the one that wants to go to America, and she's the one that's got this big dream, and, you know, it's going to make life better for all of them. And ultimately, it makes everything worse at the end of the day. And it's obviously not because of her choice, but it's just the consequences of, you know, moving and following this idea that America is the land of opportunity and stuff like that, when in reality, it's, for a lot of people, it's really not. So I just think that whole idea as a discussion point would be an interesting one to dive into next.
Just come to me. Sorry, I'm hijacking. Something that's literally just occurred to me is that, you know how you get there's the saying, like, you get order from chaos. it almost feels like you're saying that you've got a nuclear family, you've got like mum, dad, brother, sister. It almost feels like chaos comes from order. Like it's the complete opposite of that, and like the undoing. Coming to America was the family's undoing, and it showed her father's true colors. And the fact that she doesn't have a relationship with him and calls him the Chin Chin Man, like not dad or anything like that, I think is really telling. And especially when she finally meets him, like as a more mature teenager, like after Nana passes away, and there's, I can't remember where it is, but whatever page it is where she actually meets her father, and he goes to hug her, and she's like, "Don't touch me." Honey, I've been there. I have been there. I've been in those exact shoes with my dad when he tried to hug me, and I was like, "Don't touch me. Like, don't come near me. How dare you?" So I know that hit me like a ton of bricks. That was the most emotive I felt reading this whole book. And it just, I think it shows more of like how things can break down, and how you think, like you say, going to the States is like the land of opportunity, and everything will be better when you get there. But when you get there, you start off at the bottom, and not a lot of people or hardly anyone ever gets to the top, and things like that. So yeah, I definitely think like chaos comes from order, which is not what you would expect if you were thinking about it in like a scientific route. You think order comes from chaos, like how the universe was formed and things like that. So I think that plays into like the unpredictability and into the religion and science theme again. But I like that by the end of it, order kind of is restored. So it goes from order to chaos back to order again. And almost like the natural way of things is restored. By the end of the book, we're in the spoiler zone now, so it's fine. She's with Han. She's back in church again. She's also a published scientist. She's like a big shot like neuroscientist as well. So yeah, it all comes back to chaos and order, and the right order of things working themselves out eventually, I think. And like the family leads into, like you say, it's all connected: religion, family, science.
Yeah.
That's my ramble.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I like that idea of chaos as well, and
chaos theory.
Yeah, how everything just comes together at the end. I'm trying to see if I've got any particular notes. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, there's one quote I highlighted saying, "I'd come to California because I wanted to get lost to find." That's on, where is that? Chapter 2. And I feel like there as well, that was the first time I kind of thought of like the idea of this American dream thing, you know, specifically California. You know, I don't know if anyone studied American history at school, but there's a great trek across to the West Coast because that's where all the gold was, and it still seems like that's a big thing even today, like what, 100 years later. And then she, what does it say? So she says, in college I read Walden because a boy I found beautiful found the book beautiful. I understood nothing but highlighted everything, including this. Not till we are lost, in other words, not till we have lost the world, do we begin to find ourselves and realize where we are and the infinite extent of our relations. Yeah, I just thought I don't know, I really like that quote. And it's like, not till we are lost, kind of realize, I don't know.
I also just sort of say, like, I highlighted everything. I was just like, honey, same. Like, first time you go to uni and you don't know what to highlight, same.
Yeah. But I like that idea of, you know, only when you're lost in whatever way you want to use that term, you kind of realize, I guess, who you are, what you're doing, what you have, things like that, big things. And maybe, you know, she's kind of feeling lost at university or as an adult or whatever, even as a child. But then I guess throughout all of those things, she realizes, you know, how much she has had and, you know, I guess where she comes from and things like that, I guess. I don't know. I'm just kind of talking at the moment. But yeah, let me see.
I think it's super ironic how, sorry, Janet. how they've gone to America to give Nana a better life and to give him everything and to, chase this American dream, as you say, Janet. And it's kind of an underlying thing that I've only really kind of connected since we've been talking about this, that it's actually Gifty that's benefited from it all. And she's the one that's actually gained everything from being in America. I mean, I know she was born there, so it's a little bit different, but no, it's not even different. It's just the fact that she wasn't born in Ghana, but she's actually got it's again, it brings religion back into it. God, this is a clever book. The fact that Nana is portrayed as this godlike character. He's he's on the pedestal for his mother. He's intelligent, he's good looking, he's incredibly talented in sport, and he's so well liked. I mean, he's only well liked the better he plays, but that's kind of a reality thing as well. He's got these godlike characteristics, and he's looked up to by everybody in this community like kind of a head-like figure. But it doesn't work for him, and he gets caught up in the wrong crowd, and then he can't do it anymore. He doesn't want it. He's hid by this pressure so hard that his escape is nothingness. His escape is drugs. His escape is hiding from it all and going into a world of nothing. And actually, through all of this, he's giving Gifty the gift of desire to learn, desire to be, and from that, I mean, she's an intelligent girl anyway. You couldn't get to where you are without that. And it's ironic that they go with the intention of not helping, with not even having Gifty, but she benefits and gets the best life out of going to America than any of them do. And I think she's so disconnected from them all in such a way that she's had to deal with it on her own. And it's just ironic that the move to America was to make a better family life for them and for Nana to have a better future. And ultimately, it destroyed his future, but created Gifty's. And, it's kind of the ultimate sacrifice, isn't it, from him? Yeah. I mean, it might not have been a conscious decision. I don't think he planned to overdose and die in a Starbucks car park, but it paves the way for Gifty. And if she's his godlike character, it brings religion back into it again, doesn't it? That he's done it all,
He's almost like a martyr to her cause.
Yeah, exactly. And yet it takes her to go through science to try and understand what happened to him. And yet his greatest sacrifice was dying so Gifty could live. I mean, it wasn't, but in some way, subtextually, that's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
And the Chin Chin Man just goes because, I mean, the Chin Chin Man is a weird thing anyway. It kind of freaks me out that he's called that.
Yeah, beat dad.
I'm gonna sleep.
Oh, bless you. Bless you.
Thank you. Excuse me. And it's, he's such, she doesn't need the strong male figures in her life because her dad disappears and Nana dies and the pastor's a bit odd.
Yeah, Pastor John.
And she's a pioneer of life, and I think it's great that she's done it. She's a gift to herself. And again, I really like how it interconnects religion and science. Again, she's so well rounded. It transcends life, transcends consciousness.
On page 18, we had the thing about man being the only animal to had transcended kingdom, and I went, roll credits.
Yeah.
I think it's so clever, and I think she's the fact that she benefits from everything that her mother tried to give to her son, and she's had to carve it out for herself, but she does it with the help of God and the help of Nana. And Nana is such, I really liked him. I was so sad for him. I think it's even sadder the fact that it's going to happen before you even started, if you've read the blurb. And that makes it sadder because you know that it's going to end badly, and yet you start really liking this character, and you're liking his relationship with his sister, and
the fact that the author says, like you say at the end of chapter 6, that he died, before you really properly have a chance to know Nana as a character, then you have to go through his life knowing that this is what's going to happen, and it makes it hurt so much more. He was the character that I felt the closest to.
It's hard as well, I feel like, when you've been through something like that, which, you know, unfortunately I can relate to. It suddenly becomes kind of a characteristic of you, and sometimes, like, when I've been in a situation, I feel like, do I have to mention this when I first meet you, so because it's important that you know? And like, she, you know, she talks about it when she's talking to Han about her brother, and she's like, oh no, my brother's dead. And it's so like, you shouldn't have to tell someone. You're not obligated to let someone know that these kind of parts of your life, but it has become a part of you that you feel is, you know, you can't introduce yourself without, I don't know, I can't explain it.
Like, you've got to introduce your baggage when you introduce yourself.
But it's, you know, it's never something that I've ever felt, you know, before what we've been through, and then it's now it's suddenly, it just become a part of you, and it's a weird thing you've got to not carry around, I don't mean that, but it's with you. And I think, you know, she's doing her utmost best to understand it all for herself, but also kind of for everybody else, isn't she? She's like, I don't have to know why addiction works, because then I can figure it out, and I will know what's going on in Nana's head, and then I will be as close to Nana as I ever wanted to be, because I know what was going on in his head. And then obviously everyone else will benefit from that as well, because if you understand the science of addiction and whatever, and I mean, you know, we don't, but she's such a tortured soul. Poor gal.
And she definitely, there's definitely a sense of like, I have to understand this thing because there's no way to understand everything else I've been through. Like, I kind of got the impression a bit like she's writing this, if we're imagining that Gifty is writing this book rather than it being a fictional character, it's like her way of trying to understand everything she's been through. Because I feel like in some ways, as an adult, I don't know, maybe I read this wrong, but she came across to me as like, she doesn't want to, or she hasn't given herself time to really think about what she's been through, and now she's, you know, writing it all out. I kind of thought of this as like her, what's the word? Not like an inner monologue or inner dialogue, but there's
like a therapy session.
Kind of, yeah. Like, she's just letting it all out, and, you know, that would make sense with like jumping back and forwards in time. You know, something about her thoughts. What's the word? Oh, it's going to annoy me. I can't think of it. Anyway, but it's just like her thoughts are just here, and this is everything that she hasn't maybe been able to express until now, for whatever reason. So maybe by expressing these thoughts and things like that she's been through, about what she's been through, she's, you know, allowing herself to understand the things that she didn't want to think about, perhaps, or that she didn't want to understand previously, or maybe because she was too young to understand it, or whatever it might have been. I don't know. But I was going to say, my voice is starting to go. I don't know if you can hear it. Especially the relationship with her mother. I think obviously that's alongside that with Nana, but we see more of her and her mum, I think, and that's kind of the main thing. So obviously there's her and Nana, and that's almost like, what's the word? The point of which...
I'm really enjoying this.
I'm thinking like volcano, but that's not the word. Like, what happens with Nana is the point where, I mean, her and her mum obviously aren't that close anyway, because obviously, like we've discussed, like she was never planned. She wasn't the favorite child. But then after Nana, it seems like, oh, well, I'm stuck with you now kind of attitude. And I think this is in chapter 10. Yeah. Oh, hang on. Let me just go back to my quote. Chapter 10, she says something. And I've lost it. Wait, I've gone the wrong way. Background music. I don't know where it's gone. Hang on. Where's it gone? Why have I lost it? Hang on. And someone else talk while I try and find my quote. I just had it. I was prepared. And now it's gone. Have I just deleted the quote somehow? That's really annoying if I have. Hang on. Okay, well, I don't know where it's gone. Never mind.
Aww.
Okay, I don't know what I just did there.
Sad time.
Anyway, her relationship with her mum is obviously not great, and I'm going to try and find this quote because I'm determined to find it.
It's very gifty of you.
Yeah, I'm inspired. Wait, is that it? Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, for some reason I think the pages just changed a little bit. So there were 2 quotes on one page, another on 2. Anyway, so when her mum was coming to stay with her at the beginning, she says, now that my mother was staying with me, I felt less embarrassed about the soup cans overflowing in my cart. If anyone asked, I was armed with an excuse. My mother, she's ill. I imagine myself saying,
Oh no.
Oh no.
We waited so long for this quote.
I was worried. I thought that was me then freezing.
Janet.
hi, I think, yeah, my internet said no. It does that sometimes. Can you still hear me?
No.
Am I here?
Yes, you're back.
Yeah, so her mother's staying with her. She feels embarrassed and she's like, oh, but I've got this excuse. My mum's ill, so it's fine. But it's like, I don't know. Why is that the first thing that comes to her mind? Like, I need to have an excuse. I need to be ready just in case someone asks, even if they won't, and probably they aren't going to. I don't know. I just feel like the way we see the relationship change by the end of the book, even though it's not perfect, and I wouldn't say like they've mended their relationship by the end. Just looking at that from the beginning, and you know how when her mum's staying with her when she's sleeping and stuff with her, like, you know, obviously her mental health being so poor at this point, and always having her back to Gifty, and then Gifty just wants any kind of reaction and any kind of emotion, even if it's anger, just for her to see that her mum is aware of her being there. I don't know. And then I think she talks about later on the idea of the still face experiment, when babies and mothers sit facing each other, and then you know, I guess the mother reacts with facial expressions and then she doesn't, and seeing how the baby reacts to that. I don't know. And that want of attention, because obviously, I don't know, I can't imagine my mum just staring at me blankly when I'm telling her some good news or bad news or anything. Yeah, I just think it was quite heartbreaking to read that as well, especially at the beginning when you kind of don't understand their relationship to its full extent. So then by the end, like when she comes to visit the lab, and even if it's not much, and like she's just asking about the mice, it's just like, okay. I don't know if that
quite
makes
interesting,
sense.
isn't it? At the end, when like obviously it's all rounded up at the end of those last chapters, and she just talks so casually about her mum's passing, and she's like, and when she eventually did pass away, Han came with me, and it was as if like the whole thing was building up to that, and she was so fully expecting it and waiting for it that it was so easy. Not easy, but like it just what it was. And when she finally did, it was, you know, this is what it was, and it's as if she was happy for her mum in a way, because it was a release. And like this tortured, twisted relationship of trying to battle with the two of them was you know, was kind of over for her, which was quite nice. And I had something else I was going to say and I don't remember what it was, so you carry on.
It's like with the depths of her mother's depression, like having been in a depression pit that, well, not that deep, but a similar depth, and like not having the impetus to get up and not having any want to do anything, and like feeling so numb that you feel nothing. I can relate to, and I can also relate to Gifty wanting just any reaction, because I can imagine that's what people are like when you're on the outside looking in to that sort of experience. And it's horrible seeing it from like an outsider's perspective, because I'm just like, oh, that's what it was like. I just remember the depression pit. But yeah, it was really eye-opening, but also really harrowing to see Gifty going through, and the fact that she's like, she has to have an excuse ready as well, like the stigma that's still attached to mental health, which probably is driving her forward to try and find out like a scientific basis for why depression happens. I thought that was really, really interesting, that's the field that she's gone into within neuroscience, not like injuries or things like schizophrenia or psychopathy even as physical things within the brain. She's looking at depression and addiction and how that changes the physical and chemical makeup of the brain, and how it can be a physical thing that's wrong with the brain as well as a mental thing that's wrong with the brain, because ultimately depression is not producing enough happy hormones like serotonin and dopamine, which is what the antidepressants do. They help you produce more of that happy hormone. They give you that boost when your brain isn't naturally producing it enough, and it helps drive the brain to produce enough. So I found that was one of the most interesting things about her, I think, was the field in her of study that she'd gone into. And making it more a physical thing than and maybe therefore reducing the stigma.
Yeah, there's a quote I highlighted. It's on chapter 15. It's not exactly linked with mental health, but I guess it kind of links with what you're talking about. She says, do we have control over our thoughts? And I just put a note saying very philosophical, which I think most of this book is. But yeah, I guess that links with her testing on these mice, and obviously she's trying to figure out all this stuff about addiction, and she's obviously pressing this. No, how does the experiment work with the mice again? It's like
they pull the lever to release this ensure comes out when they press the lever.
And sometimes they'll get shocked, and then she tested on the ones that just kept going no matter how much shocked.
Yeah, so with that in mind, it's interesting because obviously mice are different than people, but you know, that's why she's doing this experiment, to try and figure out why people might keep going back even if they know they're going to get that shock in a way.
The sense of self-preservation.
Yeah, and I guess the idea of people just going so completely out of control. I mean, I don't mean it in that sense, but just with this quote, do we have control over our thoughts? I don't know. I just think it gets so deep, and it's just like, how do we unpack all of this?
We need neuroscience degrees to do that.
Yeah.
On a slightly less like morbid note, not morbid, but like in-depth note, is I found the names that she gave people quite interesting, and obviously we've got the Chin Chin Man, which I forget why I know that it's explained, but I forget, and it creeps me out because all I can think of is like the child catcher in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and she calls Nana Buzz, which I think is quite interesting because he's the one that suffers with addiction, and these mice get a buzz every time they press the lever and it shocks them. And I know it's not, so she does that later in life, but the fact that she calls her mum the Black Mamba is quite interesting, because obviously the Black Mamba is a snake and it's aggressive and blah blah blah. And then also I think
top 10 most venomous.
And that's quite interesting because it's like every time it strikes, it hurts her even more. And then I was thinking contemporary as well with the Mamba, Kobe Bryant, R.I.P., and his skills as a basketball player. And then obviously you've got basketball with Nana and the links with that. That's probably didn't pass. Yeah, so Kobe Bryant was he had a book or a memoir with the Mamba mentality, and that's how he played. And obviously now he's died. Oh God,
God rest him.
R.I.P. Kobe. Everyone says like long live Mamba and things like that, and it's the Mamba, and that's who he is, and that's how he goes by, and that's probably didn't pass her mind while she was writing it, but it did just because of the basketball link with Nana as well. I thought, Black Mamba, Black African American player, Kobe Bryant, he's the Mamba, Nana, basketball. It just all kind of tied in.
Connection.
Yeah.
It probably didn't go through her head, but my analytical literature brain took it that far. But yes, Mariette.
Not really too much to do with this, just that I have to go to work tomorrow for the first time in 2 weeks, annual leave and everything. So I'm gonna go now because I need to sleep. But please continue talking. It's been very interesting listening. I just need to go sleep now.
That's okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I love her.
Yeah. So, I mean, as always, going off topic, it's kind of, but still related to the book. I'm going through the quotes that I highlighted. I was saying earlier, the 288 pages or whatever it is that are in this book, I've probably got about 180 highlighted notes and comments on my Kindle.
I've got 5 pages of notes.
I don't have any notes.
But I guess, well, the idea of toxic you know what I'm trying to say. I was going to say masculinity. But masculinity. There's a quote that I highlighted in blue because I think it's sad, but it's so true. In chapter 15 as well, towards the end. Okay, I think it's when they're on the bus. I know we've kind of talked about this already, when he doesn't want to play anymore. But it's before he says this, and it's Nana had tears in the corner of his eyes that were threatening to spill, and he was making a face that I've only ever seen in young boys, a face that is the facade of a man hiding a boy who has to grow up far too fast. And fast forward a little bit. It breaks my heart now to see that face, to recognize the lie of masculinity sitting atop the shoulders of a young child. Even now, I'm like, I'm gonna cry. It's just, but I think that this is why I love this author, because the writing is so true. It's just like, I could not put it into better words to describe this whole sort of, boys shouldn't cry kind of attitude, and like, you're a sportsman, like you can do it, like you shouldn't, whatever people might say, I don't know. But yeah, I just wanted to share that because I thought that was also really important. You can see kind of the pressure that he's under, not only from his sport, but just like being a man or a boy. Even he's like 13 or something at this point. I can't remember how old he is, but yeah, and she's literally like, it's the facade of a man hiding a boy who has to grow up far too fast. And it's like, yeah, that's so sad, but so true, and it sucks. Down a TM. Yeah. I can't say it.
I'm going to just harpoon back to my last point, just because I want to make sure I've clarified it properly for any diehard Bryant fans out there. It says, I just wanted to clarify, he called himself the Black Mamba, and so it was actually full on the Black Mamba in 2003, and he used it from Kill Bill, where an assassin uses a black mamba snake to kill another character. So I knew that's why he was called the Black Mamba. And I think that's if Gyasi had any thought of Kobe Bryant while writing this book. I don't even know when she wrote it. I don't even think he died when it was it 2020 this came out. So he died in 2020.
I think it came out in 2020. I want to say that's right, but
yeah. So I mean, who knows when she was writing?
This year, so
no, he didn't. It was last year.
Was it last year?
It was last year because it was when I was in Australia. It was when I was in Australia. Last year. Yeah, it was beginning of last year. Because it was when I was in.
2020 is a bit of a write-off year because
I was in Byron Bay when it happened, and I was in Byron Bay in February.
Thailand.
Oh yeah, because it was right around the impeachment, wasn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think again, if there was any kind of connection with Kobe Bryant, I doubt it, but if there was, it's interesting that the mum was called Black Mamba. Which kills another character, and maybe I don't think she's not responsible for Nana's death at all, and she fights so hard for him. But I think it's interesting that he's the black basketball player and his mum's called Black Mamba. Yeah. I need to let go of this Kobe Bryant theory.
The fact that the mother is called the Black Mamba in her notes, I think it's because it doesn't strike unless it has to, but when it does, it strikes violently, and I think that's kind of like you see that a lot with her. With her mother, when she does strike back, when strikes Gyasi verbally, things like that, strikes her down, it is horrific. Like straight up saying to your child's face, like, we didn't want you. Like, your brother is the one we wanted. We didn't want you. Is horrific and borderline abusive, if you ask me, if not actually abusive. And it just makes so much sense, like, and her tough love and everything. Like, I'm going to bring it back to when he steps on the rusty nail and she just slaps hot oil on his foot.
But then she denies it.
Yeah.
Denies doing that.
And Gifty's just like, why didn't you just take him to the doctors and everything? But then again, that would have cost money and all these Ghanaian families around them just like use traditional Ghanaian medicine, which I get. Like I totally get. Like you don't always need to go straight to like your GPs or your doctors, and especially in America where it costs money. But when tetanus is such a big risk,
yeah,
yeah.
I was going to say a couple of points. So I've got a quote about Nana, and it says, his athleticism was a God-given talent, and my mother knew better than to question what God gives, but she hated the idea that anyone might believe that this was Nana's only gift. I think that's quite an interesting one, kind of going back to the topic of religion, and obviously, like, anyone who's good at sport or anyone with a talent, obviously they are good at other things. That's not the sole thing that they can do with their life. But I just think it's quite an interesting one that, I don't know, we could talk about, because what's the context? I guess because people are like, I think we said earlier, he's kind of known for being so good. Is it basketball he plays? Yeah,
soccer then basketball.
Yeah,
and
those words.
I've lost track of where I was going with that now.
I know.
Something about religion.
It's a God-given gift.
Yeah. I guess as well, you know, the idea of, I guess Gifty does this a little bit with her work. It's, you know, it's easy to latch on to the one thing that you think you're worth in a way, whether it's God-given or not, or however you look at it. But yeah, and then again, that you can see how when he's younger, that pressure obviously builds up, that, you know, whether it's a sport or just otherwise. And I don't know, I think it's just breaking it down now just makes it so much more sad to read about, I guess, because it's like, you can imagine people being in that situation where it's like, you know, the mum obviously sees them as being good in any other way, but obviously he's really good at basketball, just he's naturally good at sports, and hates that that's the only thing people know him for, I guess. As the favorite child, she wants everyone to see how wonderful he is in every way, and not just for sport, but that is just what people see, you know, and that's the reason why he's accepted in a lot of ways, you know, within the community or elsewhere. In school, I guess, I don't know. That's just an interesting thought, I guess.
I suppose it could play into like another argument of like race, and like all the white kids are seen as being like something other than just like a stereotype maybe, and he's black, so he can only be like, this is the one thing he's good at, and oh, we should be so proud of him for being good at this one thing. And they do make mention of like when he does pass away of an overdose, like all their lot are very prone to this, and like the racism does show its hand. I thought it was nice to see it not as like a main plot point, because more often than not, and it's true, like it shouldn't be overlooked or shouldn't be ignored, but it does tend to make up a large portion of the African American experience, and rightly so, it shouldn't be ignored. But it was nice to see that other things kind of took the focal point within this book. So like I say, the dichotomy of religion and science and the philosophy and all that sort of stuff, but it was nice to see that it wasn't completely overlooked, that it wasn't a perfect living environment aside from all of this. Like there was still racism within a community that should look out for each other, a religious community. And yeah, like everyone's going crazy, like, oh well, despite everything, he's amazing at football, and he's amazing at basketball, despite all the stuff holding him back. And it's just a thinly veiled disguise of, yeah, he's black, but he's doing well, so we've kind of got to praise him and things like that. And it's so messed up. The deeper you go into it, it gets more and more messed up. And I applaud Gyasi for tackling that sort of stuff in both of her books. Now she's tackled racism.
It's she's also, I mean, not with the racism thing, but I was thinking about this earlier, and I've been thinking for the last 10 minutes what the point was I was going to make, but I forgot. But I remembered. Obviously, Gifty is so much along with, because obviously she said to be, we didn't want you, we only wanted Nana, kind of thing. She's got obviously a resentment towards her father, which fully justifiable. But there's an interesting bit in the book when she's talking to Catherine at the party, and she gets so riled up when she finds out that Catherine's husband is keeping circles of when she's ovulating, to try and obviously implicating that he's trying to make sure that he makes a move when she's ovulating or whatever.
Yeah.
And obviously that repression of a woman, in the sense that if that's what he's doing, he could just be, it might not be his point by doing that, but that's the implication, is like he's trying to stop her from having this career that she wants because he wants kids, and it's not even a consideration that she might not want them or at that point.
Right.
And Gifty finds it so offensive, and she can't get over why Catherine isn't finding it more hurtful. And it just shows that she's so got a backup about so many things because of the life she's led, and the oppression that she's had as a woman, and obviously what's seen her mum go through, and the fact that she knows what it feels like to be an unwanted child, and she doesn't want Catherine to, or Catherine's child to, if she was to get pregnant, to be born with a mother that didn't want her, but it was not necessarily didn't want her, but didn't want her at that time or whatever. And it's interesting to show another rounded side of Gifty, and the fact that everything that's gone through her is influencing her reactions to her friends and their lives as well.
Yeah, and I think again she's obviously, well, from the start I think she's a very observant character, and I guess that makes her good for this book because obviously she has been through a lot. But I was actually looking at a quote I highlighted, and obviously it happens a few times when she's an adult, especially. She talks about all these kind of articles and all the scientific language like we've kind of discussed already. But I kind of just made a note saying, is the use of scientific language in journals a way of distancing Gifty from the reader? Because I feel like at times it's suddenly so-and-so said this and la da 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 da, and then she gets to a point, but it's like at the start of that chapter or paragraph, whatever it is, it's suddenly like, here's a scientific fact that you didn't ask for, but it links somehow, and I'm going to get there, and X, Y, and Z. And I think that kind of goes back to that first point at the beginning. We're talking about, sometimes it did feel a little bit jarring because all of a sudden she's talking about the scientific thing, and you're like, where did that come from? And then I also said, like, is she showing her kind of scientific knowledge because, she wants to show that she's good enough at this? And I think especially I don't know if it's especially at the beginning, but, she's always been under the shadow of her brother, and she wants to almost prove herself in the scientific world. And I guess she does get there because we know at the end she has all the success being a neuroscientist. But I did kind of find like sometimes, I think this is why I preferred her chapters from when she was younger in some ways, because we'd had less of that and it was like a more authentic her. Whereas when she's an adult, it's more like, here's another fact and here's another article and here's another thing and la 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 la, and it's just, there's quite a lot. And I felt like, is she just like saying this to make her sound, I don't know how necessary it is, or I don't know, but I don't know what I'm trying to say. Is it like, I don't know, is she distancing herself from the reader? Has she kind of got used to kind of having to look out for herself because of her relationship with her family, especially her mum? I don't know.
I really like that. Like she is trying to push people away, because there's also I can't remember exactly where it is, but there's a quote that I've got. It's on page 104. Do you want a hug? No, not really. And I said, is it wrong to think that it's sad siblings don't want to show affection? Is this a cultural thing, something we do so readily in the West, but would be almost taboo in Ghana? And it's like, from a very early age, she's not been shown like the love that maybe we would expect from a family unit. And she's just got used to pushing people away and dealing with stuff on her own. And that just, it really hit home, and I was like, that's so sad. Like, do you want a hug? No, I don't. And it's just like, oh. Someone who runs on hugs, who functions with hugs. Lockdown was very difficult for me. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
It's nice that at the end of the book it rounds off really well for her. I mean, it's the typical happy ending, isn't it? But it's not. It's and it's so short, you know. It's it's very like, fast forward, this is what's happened. She's with Han. She's really happy with her life. She's found a kinship in him, and they understand each other, and they've gone through it all together in silence during the years. And I think, but it's nice because it's not a dragged out, gross, soppy ending. Like, oh, and then Han finally asked me out, and we were living together, and it's beautiful, and I'm so successful, got so many accolades. And it's like, well, it's not. It's just to the point, like her life's always been. But but for once in her life, it's actually under her terms, and she's so good with it, you know. She's got her scientific career, that's her priority, but she's got Han, who's her partner, and it's great, and it's not overbearing, and he's there with her, and he's gone through it all with her, and he's watched her progression. And then she's got this job, is it Princeton she teaches at, or whatever it is, and
something,
and she's really made it, and it's, but she's done it herself, and it's so, I mean, spoiler, and it's so refreshing to see her battle through everything and got there on her own. And then but this romantic relationship isn't a key theme, you know. It's not like, again, she's not a woman that's had to rely on having a romantic partner to get her through everything. She's done it herself, and now she's there, she's got a partner that's supporting her with it, and that's and he compliments her, as opposed to him having to be there to make her who she is, with the stereotypical female protagonist. She's just
the Bechdel. He's just the goodest of eggs, and we all deserve a Han.
We all deserve a Han, and it's stupid that, you know, we even have to discuss the fact that a female character has to have a romantic relationship or romantic interest to make her story valid. It's great the fact that this doesn't, and it talks about her romantic relationships in the past and how they haven't worked, and how she's not really that bothered, and she's good on her own.
It also shows she's not willing to just kind of let everything go for the sake of a relationship. You know, she's always kind of been herself, from what I can remember. And like you say, I think it's nice that you see them together at the end, but also you can, you know, it would have been perfectly good seeing her on her own at the end, having the successes, and knowing that she'd be okay with that, I think.
I love that. Oh, sorry,
No, I was just saying, it bookends it as well with her mother, because, you know, that battle of her life is gone, and she doesn't have to deal with it anymore, and she's gone from a family of 3 to 2 to 1, and and she's like, and she's done it on her own forever, and now she hasn't got that pressure anymore, and it does bookend her story, doesn't it? It's like, now that part of her life which made her who she is, you know, it's just a part of her. It's not her defining feature anymore, which is it's good. So Jess, go.
All I was going to say was, I was going to draw back to the romance and everything. It doesn't really happen until like the last 50 pages. It's on 223. The world's cutest pickup line. I love it. Where he's just like, he says, "Hey Gifty, do you want to go get dinner with me sometime? I mean, it was nice to share that and sure and all, but maybe we could get a real meal this time." And he's got his gloves and his safety goggles on, and he was watching me warmly, hopefully, his ears glowing faintly red. He's just so cute. And she says, "I'm horrible at relationships." And he says, "Okay, but how are you at eating dinner?" And
I love it.
Like, he's so cute. Everybody needs a dorky scientist in their life. And the fact that he's not chasing after her, and that she's able to decide what she wants for herself for maybe like the first time in her life, sort of thing. And it's just such a nice contrast to the other relationships she has throughout this book. So she has one with Anne, she's lusting after the girl at the supermarket, so that goes nowhere. She's got this other relationship with this guy earlier in the book as well, and she kind of like leads him on, and understandably he gets cross when he realizes that she's been lying to him about wanting to meet his family and go back to Ghana and things like that. And she doesn't know what she wants from relationships until like she and Han, it comes about naturally, and it's just
I think I know, I was going to say, I like how it shows all the other ones. Like we said already, it's just a side thing, you know, that's not the main part of the story, but I'm glad that they did, we did see it.
Me too.
And how everything
But
been acted.
It happened largely off page, I think, which made it pay off as well. Like, you don't need to see the ins and outs because it's not a romance.
Exactly, yeah.
It's just a small part of her life, and the main part is the depression and the grief and her work and her battle with is religion or science more important? Why can't it be both?
Yeah.
And
I guess ultimately for her, I don't know, would you say both are as important to her as each other?
I would say just in life in general, like, both are equally important. Like, I'm not religious myself, but I don't poo-poo what I don't understand.
Right.
Like, don't knock what you don't know. For all I know, there is a higher purpose, and I admire anyone with faith. Like, I personally don't have it, and to anyone who does, like, I have mad respect. So yeah, I believe in the paranormal, but not everybody does. So
all about belief, isn't it? And that's she believes in
and also
herself.
Living with a poltergeist, it's kind of difficult not to believe in it.
I mean, that's fair enough. Well, I don't have anything else to say other than Jess, has this conversation changed your opinion at all on this book?
It kind of has, yeah. I'm still sitting at 3. It's more firmly at 3 stars. I think it just isn't the book for me. Like, lit fic really isn't for me, but I will keep reading it and I will keep trying. I much prefer plot-driven narratives. That's what I write. That's what I love to read. I love like YA fantasy and new adult fantasy is my go-to, and queer fluffy contemporary romances. Combine the two and I'm happy. So yeah, it definitely is something completely different to what I would normally read. It's dark. It's hitting on a lot of topics that really impact me, and I think, like I say, it was just too big-brained. Too many long neuroscience words, which I thought I understood neuroscience. Turns out I don't. So yeah, that's the main reason why it wasn't my favorite, but I'm glad that I read it. And Homegoing definitely is still my favorite that she's written so far, but I will definitely continue reading her books.
Me too.
I love her writing style.
Yeah, I think there's just something, she has such a talent, and
I've just found an additional thing to my basketball theory. These, I've said from the beginning, look like the key of a basketball court.
They do.
These bits here and here.
I mean,
so I'm saying Kobe Bryant is in this book. long live the Black Mamba. No, I really liked it. I think, I really enjoyed this discussion, actually. It's just so, I love the fact that when we discuss these things, that more things come to light. And then you're sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, yes, this. I've not read Homegoing, and I kind of, I'm not chomping at the bit to read it, but I feel like I will get around to it.
It's much easier to read, I would say, than Transcendent Kingdom in terms of
font is smaller, more pages, longer chapters,
but no science.
No science.
No drilling of my skulls.
No philosophy, really. It's kind of as it comes, historical fiction. But there is a lot of dark plot points in it, especially in the America sections, because it's not a spoiler. One half of the family gets sold into slavery, so
that is a big part of it.
Actually being sold into slavery in the 18th century, then the 19th century living under slavery, then Jim Crow laws, etc.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, if you are happy to read about that topic, then you'll enjoy it, I think. And if you like historical fiction, it's a really interesting one, and there's lots of different characters, but they all link, and it's she has a really clever way of writing, I think. So you'd probably enjoy that one. But it's one of my favorite books, so I would say that to anyone.
All right. I'm very aware that it's midnight in Russia, Janet.
It is, yes, but I don't start work until about 1 o'clock. So
I start work at 7:30, so I'm gonna go.
fun times.
But it's been great. I think I'm sticking with my 4. I thought it was very good.
Yeah, me too. And I think this discussion. I think this is one of those books. If I go back to reading it, in the future, I think there's just more to unpack every time.
I think
you read it. It's one of those. I think. Yeah.
100%.
Alrighty. Well, I think we will end there. Thank you very much for the chats.
Thank you for
and the
hosting
thoughts.
today.
I don't know what this is. But yeah. Anyone watching on playback or whatever you call it, subscribe and join us next month when we talk about Mexican Gothic. It's Nori's choice. Nori's not here right now, but I'm sure they will be to talk about everything Mexican and Gothic. I've just it, so far so good, but I'm only 2 chapters in.
I haven't started yet.
Yeah. And we have all of our links to things in the description if you want to follow us elsewhere. Check that out. And,
comment, subscribe.
Yeah, do all the stuff, do the things, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.